কে অদ্বৈত আশ্রমের মহারাজ সেকেন্ড রোতে বসে আছে, নীল রঙের মাস্ক। ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम। सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। हरिः ओम। शन्नो मित्रः शं वरुणः शन्नो भवत्वर्यमा शन्नो इन्द्रो बृहस्पतिः शन्नो विष्णुरुक्रमः। नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वामेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि। ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि। तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु माम् अवतु वक्तारम्। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। हरिः ओम। स्वस्ति न इंद्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। हरिः ओम। पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। हरिः ओम। तत्सत्। श्रीरामकृष्णार्पणमस्तु।
Ayamarambo Shubhayo Bhavatu. With the Vedic hymn chanted by the monks, the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture welcomes you all to its 83rd Foundation Day celebration this evening. We are very happy to have with us our Honorable Governor of West Bengal, Sri Jagdeep Dhankar ji, who is also the President of the Institute's Managing Committee. A former Union Minister and Chairman of a Parliamentary Committee, Sri Dhankar ji was the Deputy Leader of a high-level delegation to the European Parliament. He will kindly preside over the celebration today. It's a joy that we have in our midst the First Lady of the State, respected Srimati Sudesh Dhankar ji, a postgraduate in economics and well known for her keen interest in social, cultural, and educational activities. On our left is Professor Prabal Kumar Sen, who will deliver Foundation Day oration today. Former student of Ramakrishna Mission, Narendrapur, an eminent professor of economics. He is the founder chairman of Entrepreneurship Development Center, XLRI, Jamshedpur. As a visiting professor, he taught at several premier institutions like IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Amritsar, IIM Ranchi, and also taught at XLRI centers in Singapore and UAE, the United Arab Emirates. Professor Sen has evaluated no less than 26 PhD theses related to different aspects of economic development like finance, banking, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. A Best Teacher awardee and with Lifetime Achievement Award, Professor Prabal Kumar Sen will speak on a very interesting topic, the new normal. What does it mean to India? What does it mean to the world? We also welcome in our midst the highly acclaimed legal expert and formerly the Advocate General of West Bengal, Sri Anindra Kumar Mitra, who needs no introduction to this audience. He is the Vice President of the Institute's Managing Committee. Also on the dais is Swami Suparnanandaji Maharaj, the Secretary of the Institute, who will extend felicitations to the dignitaries on the dais, and that will be followed by the address of welcome. Revered Maharaj.
Om Janani Shaludang Deving Ramakrishnam Jagat Gurum Padapadmitayo Sritva Pranamami. I heartily welcome Honorable Governor Mr. Jagdeep Dhankarji and Mrs. Sudesh Dhankarji also in our midst on the sacred occasion of the Institute 83rd Foundation Day celebrations. I welcome Mr. Anindra Mitra, the Vice President of the Managing Committee of the Institute. I welcome all the Swamis, devotees, and I also welcome the only trustee present in this hall, Swami Bimalatmanandaji. I specially express my thanks, gratitude, love, namaskar and pranams to all of them. The COVID monster has made the entire world hapless and helpless. Our normal life has been shattered. We are trying to rebuild. And with the help, with the grace of the divine, we feel that this impasse will be over within a couple of months or so. Now, this concept of normal, as you know, is rather flanked by two crises. Between one crisis and the next lies what we may call the normal. Our present way of living definitely has caused the present crisis, and our past way of living has caused this phenomenon, the crisis that we are facing now, and the present way of living will be the cause of the next global crisis. We have cut ourselves off from the sacredness of life. We have to stop wrangling over our petty affairs. Professor Probal Sen will deal with that topic extensively. He is a profound scholar, I know, and a great thinker also. And he has been one of the finest products of Narendrapur. I welcome him on behalf of myself, especially, and on behalf of the Institute in general. He will show us, definitely, the way to get back to a sense of order, of rhythm, of stability, of purity in us. Like any other institute, our center has also been close to the visitors so long. In a way, for the first time, we are going to hold this function publicly. And that's why we could not invite sufficient number of devotees and scholars and citizens of this city. But as every crisis has also some silver linings, in this case also, we have been blessed with several things which we could never even imagine. Mind that. It is in the form of increasing use of technology to have online dialogues and talks, holding seminars. And our devotees all over the world have appreciated this arrangement. Well, they said that you have given us an opportunity to listen to so many programs that are being held there regularly and without fail. The greater number of viewers, they appreciate. So this is the positive aspect of this crisis. Henceforth, we will take to this sort of mechanism to reach out more people along with the regular public meetings, real meetings, as we are holding here right now. Now I can mention a few of our achievements. We somehow maintain our regular activities not in the fullest form. During the period under review, the total number of books issued in the library was like 80,000 or so. A new session started with 5,600 students in the School of Languages. So this is a great thing, mind that. We held the previous year's annual exams for as many as 19 languages, and then also we have been able to admit the students. And this number, 5,600, is not a very small number. We published 4 books from the research department. Our monthly journal bulletin, it has been published regularly, thanks to the publication department and especially of the efforts of Swaraj Majumdar and Tirthankar Daspurakasto, the real editor, not virtual as such. Number of youth participants was 11,600. Number of books distributed among different village centers, about 8,000. In personality development programs, 350 students attended in as many as 10 classes. We held music festival also on 12th January, Swamiji's birthday. Obviously, it was held in virtual. Educational expenditure and charitable help to the people who are in need. So we could not just ask them to come and collect the money personally. We asked them to send the details and the papers, and we transferred the money online. And the amount thus distributed was 76 lakh. And the applications are pouring in, and by March, it would cross 1 crore, the usual amount we have been distributing. Of course, our international guest house is almost closed till now. So from near and from very near places in and around of this ashrama or center, some guests are coming to stay over a few nights. Barring this, we have no income from this big unit. And we have to spend as much as 15 lakhs per year towards remuneration. So that is a great liability on our part. We have been shouldering it so long 10 months or so. I am grateful to both the central and state governments for the generous grants. So they are supposed to bear only 2/3 of the expenditure. Total amount of the budget, yearly budget is about 15 crores. And this each institute has to collect near about 4 crores per year. That is a stupendous task. The situation has become all the more difficult for us because of the persistent fall in the bank rate. You all are the victims, sufferers. You can understand in a much more definite way than we do here. I'm thankful to the donors, the devotees, the monastic brothers of this center, and member of the managing committee. Professor Ajay Rai has come, Pavitra has come. I especially thank them. So braving this dreaded disease, they ventured out, they have decided to come over here to attend. And I especially thank the Swamijis who are working in the headquarters at Belur Math. My thanks are due to the compeer. People say that he is incomparable compeer. Really so. Sri Shakti Prasad Mishra. He holds the Nivedita chair here. I end up with high hope. Let us give up our love for unjust greed and unjust power and be on ourselves and face every event, good or bad, equanimously. My salutations to the Holy Trinity. Jai Ma. Hari Om Tat Sat.
As has just been pointed out by the Secretary Maharaj, that in view of certain unexpected developments, our life, work and social life all have been altered. Have we to adjust to this new normal for long, permanently, or just a passing phase? Shall we go indrawn or more spiritual? Will this world be a harsh reality, cruel world for us? Or this little planet of ours will be much better place to live in? These are the questions that come to our mind, that haunt us. And Professor Prabal Kumar Sen is there to answer these questions. Professor Sen.
His Excellency, the Governor of West Bengal, Honorable Shri Dhankar, Madam Dhankar ji, Secretary Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, Swami Suparnananda ji Maharaj, other revered Swamijis, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture in general and the Secretary of the Institute, revered Swami Suparnananda ji Maharaj, in particular, for having afforded me this opportunity to interact with an enlightened assembly like the present one. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here this evening because it is like homecoming to me, as I had the privilege of being a student in a sister institution, namely Ramakrishna Mission Residential College, Narendrapur, from where I have graduated 5 decades ago, where, among others, Swami Suparnanandaji had been one of my esteemed teachers. It is indeed a pleasure to recall my association with this premier center of learning and research, if not for anything else, then for the way it promotes the cause of value-based education, which is founded on the principles of ethics and human values, but by no means bound by any denominational ties. I remember how Swami Lokeshwaranandaji, founder of the institution, would never tire of emphasizing the composite culture which characterizes India, and which, according to him, we should always be proud of. I also recall how Swami Mukshanandaji would teach us the tenets of the Holy Quran, the Bible, the Granth Sahib, the Tripitaka, and the Upanishads and the Gita equally passionately in his classes on Indian culture, which was a compulsory subject for all of us in the college, irrespective of the course which we chose as our principal discipline. This institution, as I recall, espouses the cause of an education which is morally edifying and yet not otherworldly. Ladies and gentlemen, talking of the so-called new normal, we all are aware how the novel coronavirus, that is COVID-19, has emerged as a scourge confronting all of humanity, impacting lifestyles, businesses, economies, and the assumption of a common well-being that all of us had so far taken for granted. As we enter the new year, more than 10 crore people from across 190 countries have been infected with this ailment, out of whom 21 lakh have perished. The mortality rate thus working out to 2.1%. In India, 1.07 crore have so far been infected, and around 1.5 lakh have succumbed to this disease. The mortality rate thus standing at 1.4%. Even before the outbreak of this pandemic, the global economy was confronting turbulence on account of disruptions in trade flows and declining growth. India too had witnessed during the same period an unhappy economic state, as the country's real GDP had decelerated to its lowest in over 6 years in the third quarter of the financial year 2019-20, as per official statistics released by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, Government of India. The situation across the world, including India, was aggravated by the demand, supply, and liquidity shocks that COVID-19 had inflicted. Spread of this dreaded disease at a scary speed has transformed the world's hustle into varying degrees of uncertainty. One of the few things that seem fairly certain is that the current downturn is fundamentally different from recessions that the world has witnessed so far. This is not just another turn of the business cycle, but a shake-up of the world economic order. While countries and companies continue to comprehend the scale of this pandemic, it is certainly undeniable that we are staring at more permanent structural changes to the way we live, work, and play. In other words, this pandemic has presented us with what is described by many as a new normal. Overall, this crisis is a story with an uncertain ending. What is, however, clear is that COVID-19 has introduced new challenges not only to the business environment, but also to the ecosystem in which humankind lives and works. These challenges call for a measured, well thought out, and informed approach from the policymakers and the society at large. Being aware of and preparing for these shifts will help businesses and countries navigate in the post-COVID-19 world. The collective experience of going through this common crisis will lead to questioning of fundamental assumptions and priorities, which will be both a challenge and an opportunity. In India, like in most other countries, the focus at the beginning of the pandemic had been on preventing the contagion and protecting the lives of the population through lockdown and providing the poor with essential items of relief. The policymakers in due course have veered round to a long-term perspective of restoring the health of the economy by securing the viability of businesses and the livelihoods of people. Attempt is being made also toward providing robust safety nets for all the vulnerable, ensuring job continuity and job creation, admittedly with varying degrees of success. Studies indicate that in the changed circumstances, it becomes necessary for countries to pursue a path of involving the following key imperatives. It is hoped that doing so would help countries navigate to the next normal, which again is not likely to be exactly the same old normal state which we were familiar with. But then that would be what Swami Vivekananda would have stated: half a loaf is better than no bread. Now, I have said that there are some imperatives which the society is expected to pursue in order to reach the next normal. These imperatives are: 1, continuing thrust on public health management. What we face today is verily a public health emergency, which it is apprehended will linger even after the vaccine is fully rolled out. As such, it will be advisable for the policymakers and the public at large, including the businesses, to continue to follow the public health protocol. Policymakers across countries will also have to continue with their efforts to strengthen the health delivery system in their respective countries. Number 2, digital push. Most companies have opted to work remotely, and their employees are now online and working from home. Swami Suparnanandaji was referring to the change in the style of functioning of this institute also. He said that most of the events which were conducted by the institute were online, were virtual. Educational institutions too are taking to digital mode of working at an increasing pace. While these trends were already in motion, they have now hit the fast forward button. Even many of the brick and mortar organizations have been forced to experiment with digital channels. This presents an immediate opportunity for augmenting investment in enabling technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning, edge computing, which is expected to replace cloud computing, and take care of the inadequacies of cloud computing. And then blockchain, Internet of Things, IoT, and cyber security, etc. Advancement of these areas of digital technology will not only improve efficiencies across businesses in a time marked by social distancing and remote working, but also enhance employment opportunities for the youth. Number 3, shift towards localization. And here I remember what our Prime Minister often says, vocal for the local. In fact, that is the emphasis in most other countries also. The supply chain disruption has brought to light the impact of black swan events. That, along with the ongoing online geopolitical environment and a globally recessionary climate, is likely to lead to greater protectionism and risk aversion. This is expected to lead to more localization of supply chains, especially of essential and for sectors that are seen as strategically important. Number 4, focus on agility. The ongoing pandemic is forcing countries and companies to adopt mechanisms suitable for implementation in any unexpected events in the future. Policymakers will need to be more responsive, inclusive, and agile, and be capable of taking quick actions in the absence of perfect data, while remaining customer-centric, addressing employees' needs, and reinforcing stable team dynamics. Number 5, supply chain resilience. I have a little while ago said that localization is the theme which is being emphasized by most countries. But notwithstanding this, supply chain resilience is also important, because we cannot live without getting anything from outside. And it is always advisable if we can export our things outside. And that is facilitated only through supply chain resilience. Wuhan has been a major industrial hub. We are all familiar with this infamous name, Wuhan, in China. And an integral part of the global supply chain. Wuhan has been an integral part of the global supply chain, rocked by the initial spate of COVID-19 in late 2019. It had its ripple effect on the economy of the entire world. Analyzing the impact of the Fukushima earthquake of 2011, global supplier of metallic paint, and Thailand flood of October 2011, which Thailand, as you know, was the global supplier of computer chips. Now, with these, unfortunate events in these two centers, we can conclude that the loss of production within a small geographic and economic area has the potential to create a magnified ripple effect if the product is critical to supply chain globally. While the trend towards localization, which was referred to by me earlier, cannot be wished away, it would nevertheless be necessary for individual companies to ensure that their supply chains are resilient so as to remain competitive. Risks to supply chains are numerous and continuously evolving, as underlined by the cases relating to Wuhan, Fukushima, and Thailand, which I mentioned earlier. Number 6, thrust on entrepreneurship. According to ILO estimates, in 2020, 1.2 billion workers in G20 countries were in informal employment, representing 55% of total employment in these countries, 20% in G20 developed economies, and 67% in G20 emerging economies, which include India. I am referring to G20 data because credible information was provided by ILO for this group, and secondly, because India is also a part of this group. Now, of these workers, it is estimated of the informal workers to the tune of 1.2 billion, it is estimated that 850 million, that is 70%, are likely to have been thrown out of employment or otherwise heavily impacted by the COVID-19 crisis. Moreover, relative poverty, defined as the proportion of workers with monthly earnings that fall below 50% of the median earnings in the population, is projected to increase steeply for informal workers and their families by around 36 percentage points in G20 economies. In such circumstances, and considering that the scope for generating, thank you, Maharaj. Thank you much. In such special circumstances, and considering that the scope for generating wage employment opportunities on a large scale is shrinking by the day on account of different kinds of difficulties which are faced by three traditional providers of job, namely the government, the corporate business, and the voluntary sector, where you have the NGOs and the development institutions. Now, I have mentioned that these three providers of jobs, they are facing some very peculiar and extraordinary problems, and on account of which they are not in a position to create jobs in the same manner as they were doing earlier. What are these difficulties which these three agencies which were providing jobs are currently encountering? The government, as you all know, in most countries are currently passing through severe fiscal strain. And you know that most of the countries are guided by the FRBM framework, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. And these, because of the restrictions put in by the FRBM framework and because of the spendings which these countries have done in the recent past to address the issues arising out of the COVID-19 pandemic, they are not in a position to spend much more to create employment. That is the difficulty which the governments are facing. Now, the corporate businesses have also been providers of job in a big way. Now, the corporate businesses are gradually taking to the route of automation and in some cases even robotics. I know of some companies run by some of our students who have adopted robotics. Now, with automation, artificial intelligence and robotics, the need for hiring manpower comes down considerably. Now, the third provider of employment, namely the voluntary sector. Voluntary sector consists of NGOs and development institutions. Like Ramakrishna Mission is also a voluntary institution. Now, all these institutions in the voluntary sector, they are also passing through, very difficult times. And, one of the reasons is, and this problem has arisen even before the outbreak of the pandemic, and that is the decline. Swamiji will bear me out that world over, the incidence of, philanthropy is coming down considerably. And that is the reason why the NGOs and development institutions are also hamstrung. And they are not in a position to generate employment in the same big way as they were doing earlier. Because of these difficulties, the three traditional providers of job are not in a position to create employment on a large scale. Therefore, I always say, therefore, there is a need for putting a thrust on entrepreneurship. That is employment through self-employment route, not wage employment. And here, I would like to say that the youth will have to be exhorted to go in for, entrepreneurship. And now, having talked about the economic implications of the pandemic, and the difficulties, therefore, that we are facing in the new normal, I would now like to talk about some softer sides, some issues on the humanitarian side. The economic consequences of COVID-19 pandemic have not fallen with equal severity on all shoulders. Existing vulnerabilities have been exposed and inequalities entrenched. Many of those with the most limited means have been the least able to protect themselves in the new situation. Low-paid workers have been exposed to the full force of the health and job crisis. Low-paid, often low-skilled workers were particularly affected. These issues have impacted the mental health of people around the world, particularly among the underprivileged across these countries. In fact, COVID-19 is affecting people's social connectedness, their trust in people and institutions, their jobs and incomes, as well as imposing a huge toll in terms of anxiety and worry. In such a situation of widespread gloom and despair, one needs support of compassion and solace, apart from the support on economic and logistic front from the policymakers and the government. Here, therefore, one remembers Swami Vivekananda, who, if one could borrow Henry Bergson's words, used, of course, in a different context, thought like a man of action and acted like a man of thought. In such circumstances, one may recall that Vivekananda would often underline the strength of the armor of quietude that works to prevent fear and panic, the armor of silence that powers solitude, and the armor of stillness that helps flatten the curve. And if we remember these words, these advices of Swami Vivekananda, perhaps we will be in a better place to address the soft issues, the humanitarian issues that we are encountering currently. Thank you very much.
Oh my God. Thank you, Professor Sain, for your measured, well thought out, and intellectually stimulating talk. He has definitely sounded a timely warning while referring to certain economic and mental implications. But at the same time, even as we know that 47% of existing jobs will vanish and will have vanished, but new opportunities will also come. And we have to grab them. At the same time, we, those who are fortunate few in India, will have to be a little more compassionate and loving to the unfortunate brethren of ours, as has been pointed out by Swami Vivekananda ji. May I now request what we are most eagerly waiting for, the talk by the president of today's function, also the president of our managing committee.
My greetings to all of you, respected Swami Supernanand Ji Maharaj, Secretary of the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, Sri Anindya Kumar Mitra, Distinguished Legal Professional, former Advocate General, State of West Bengal, Professor Prabal Kumar Sen, eminent professor of economics and founder chairperson of Entrepreneurship Development Center, Jamshedpur, revered monks, distinguished scholars, Sri Shakti Prasad Mishra ji, the First Lady, Srimati Sudesh Dhankad, and everyone present here. I am extremely energized and blessed to be associated with the 83rd Foundation Day celebration of Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture. Coming to this place always reminds me my fundamental duties. The very existence of such a center of excellence in the city of joy is a matter of pride for all of us. Professor Prabal Kumar Sen has rendered an extraordinary discourse in a very rational manner. Impact of his knowledge of economics and the societal impact COVID has had on us and the potential it offers to all of us have been very well articulated. My greetings to him. COVID has impacted us as never before. Virtual has become new normal. I have seen some positive signs also. As indicated by Swamiji, we have become technological savvy. But there has been a fallout also of a positive nature on societal behavior. And one is emotive connect has been enhanced. We were so much lost in day-to-day life that we wanted to have time for some, but we had no time to connect with them. COVID, in a sense, has turned out to be blessing and curse for that particular aspect. And that is, we could connect with the people, with our family members, with our friends, with whom we really wanted to connect, but in the rat race, had no time for them. After being in connect with them during this most challenging period, we have come to realize what we had been missing for long. Secondly, our age-old traditions, age-old ethos have suddenly surfaced, and we found a rare human behavior in display where we engaged in hand-holding the needy. And that is a reminder to us that when there are challenges of this nature, human nature and genius rise to the occasion, as we did during pandemic COVID. The last words of Swamiji when he concluded his discourse greatly touched me, and I would focus on that also. Unjust greed and unjust power. We need to shun them. It is very difficult. We see it all around. Boundless unjust greed. Power knows no bounds. Constitutional parameters, limitations are being trampled, and all not to serve societal cause, not to accomplish anything that can be termed as sublime, personal aggrandizement, and that is something we need to curb. COVID is a stark reminder for that also. COVID has changed our mindset. COVID has changed the way we live, the way we plan, the way we work, the way we think, and I'm sure it's for the positive direction. Much has been said about the Institute. I have felt it. I have experienced it. I have been motivated and inspired. But today, with a sense of apology, I would lay my heart bare on one particular aspect. Culture means ultimate in expression. Ultimate. This is a center of excellence, well past 8 decades. Culture knows no fear. Culture calls upon us to engage in fearless expression of our genius, of our inclinations, of our thoughts. People are present here who are enormously learned and far more learned than I can claim for myself. But when I see around a sense of fear, when I see around that fear is to such a degree, to such a level, it has reached that dimension of enormity that we are unable to speak about the fear. And that is not good for societal growth. I am sure everyone here will reflect that this great institute of excellence, the cultural vibes will emanate in a geometrical manner the moment we create an atmosphere that there is no fear. That fear I have sensed, I can share it with you 24/7. That fear I have felt with the high and mighty. Those constraints of human behavior I see day in and day out. My heart bleeds. I weep inside. When a week does not pass, when I come to know that someone wants to see me at Rajbhavan, but doesn't want his or her name to be known. And that speaks volumes. Fear has gone to a level that silent majority is in such deep silence, deafening silence, that silence resonates in my ears. I fear the silent majority, if it does not rise to the occasion now, it will be silenced forever. I am too small a man to give a clarion call, but even a small man like me, standing in this position, being enlightened by the Trinity, can dare say, please, time has come to make contribution to ensure our culture blossoms. And our culture can blossom only when sense of fear shall not be there. I have in my own way made earnest efforts, indicated to the intelligentsia, appealed to their good conscience. Please catalyze the situation. Some people have spoken to me. We are helpless. How can we do as individuals? I remind them, is the soldier at the LAC or LOC not helpless? The soldier has the same commitments, same vulnerability. He is prepared to take the bullet on the chest for Ma Bharati. How come then those who have to guide this society by enlightenment to ensure that sublimity of cultural values does not eclipse? On what premise, on what logic, on what rationale that silence can be justified? I wouldn't say more on the occasion because I know everyone present here is an enlightened human soul. They know what I'm talking. They feel it. And trust me, if we do not get engulfed in the deep sense of fear, then this place would be what it was earlier. This place deserves a much better contribution by the living humankind as a tribute to those whose thought process stirred the global values, motivated global minds, inspired global leaders, and we cannot afford to fail them. I conclude, coming to this place in this position, I know is not something what I've earned. Anindya Mitraji is here because he has earned it. Swamiji is here because he has earned it. We have a distinguished professor, he has earned it. I am here because of a position I hold. But I thought today that this first non-virtual interaction, I would put forth without qualification, in an unqualified manner, my thought on this day. And I have no doubt if those present here will take the call, it will spread geometrically. It will spread in a positive sense with far more impact than COVID has had. And the moment we reach that particular situation, the state of West Bengal will not only be at the pinnacle, but it will remind us of our past glory, because the present is matching the past. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Our grateful thanks to our Honorable Governor. What he has said is just too precious to be easily thrown away. It is no leap assertion, straight from his heart. Robust optimist as he is, as he has pointed out certain positive sides of Corona, at the same time, he has reminded us of our duties, what we need to do. First, we have to shun greed, we have to shun power, and we have to get rid of phantoms of fear, while pointing out that we must get rooted to our culture, because it is culture that withstands shocks, as said by Swami Vivekananda. Thank you, sir, for your great emotive talk and intellectually so stimulating. Thank you. May I now request Sri Anindya Kumar Mitra, Vice President of our Managing Committee, and as has been said earlier, he needs no introduction to us. He is a legal luminary, proposing vote of thanks, sir.
Your Excellency, Governor of West Bengal, Mrs. Dhankar, Swami Suparnanandaji, Secretary of the Institute, and our Chief Speaker, Professor Sen, and the distinguished members of the audience. We have all assembled here to discuss and understand the new normals which have been brought about by COVID-19. For example, your sitting arrangements today. You're sitting, keeping one seat vacant in between, what you call safe distancing. Will that be a normal or new normal which will be accepted and become part of our life? It is a change. It may not be normal. Normal means a new change which becomes normal and continue forever. This COVID have brought about few new changes which we all hope and wish would be new normals. Namely, cleanliness and sense of hygiene. Washing hands frequently, at least before and after a meal. This change brought about by COVID may continue as a new normal all over the world. Safe distancing may have an impact not only in India and the world, all over the world. From hygienic point of view, already we have seen the Namaskar has taken the place of handshake. In all over the world, they're gradually giving a handshake and adopting Indian way of greeting, Namaskar. That is an impact of COVID-19 which may bring about a new normal. So, impact of COVID may bring about some changes which we should welcome as normalcy to continue. We have all been benefited by the profound knowledge Professor Sain has displayed on the statistics, in economics, and we are all grateful to him. Our governor, as usual, has been erudite. Last time also, he has given a similarly educative speech from which you all learned something. Swamiji Suparnananda has organized this meeting in a manner keeping with normalcy of COVID age. This is the normal for the time being. Self-distancing physically, but we do hope that mentally that distance would not be maintained. We all Indians will remain close to each other mentally, one mind, and speak with one voice. Thank you. The word thanks means gratitude. But because of frequent use of the word thanks, his meaning, original meaning has diluted. When I thank you, gentlemen, I thank you with the original sense, that is expression of gratitude, not mere thank, not for serving a cup of tea. Thank you all, gentlemen. Thank you all of you in the audience for bearing with us. And now, a vote of thanks has always been appreciated by the audience. Doesn't matter who speaks and what he speaks, for the primary reason that there is no speech thereafter.
With this vote of thanks, our program ends. Thank you very much. Of course, expression of gratitude to you all.